Hello and welcome to Leadership Emotional Development, LLC. This is the first core-level workshop from our systems theory group, specially designed for leaders of all industries. This workshop will give you the principles of systems theory and will introduce the challenges found in complex environments, so you can understand, adapt, and apply them to your own surroundings, experience them within your own networks, and become a better leader with the team you lead at your workplace. Introduction. Leadership is observed in a complex system when actions or communications of one or more agents, called leader agents, can be shown to adopt an approach or cooperation strategy for working towards a common objective. A leader agent is said to influence other agents, called followers, when it offers a set of choices, tasks, and resources, together constituting a program of action within the collective that is adopted by the followers. When this occurs, the individual actions of the followers and the leader become intercorrelated, and that is when they begin to act as a system. Once the system begins operating and new demands take off, a new approach to structuring organizations with new complex systems and new environments will begin. Using the process of systems thinking, mental modeling, and relational dynamics, leaders will analyze their organizations and develop tools to better understand how complex systems dynamics operate in their environment. This core-level leadership workshop will introduce 7 modules. The modules are as follows. 1. Leadership in complex systems. 2. Systems theory. 3. Complex adaptive systems. 4. Systems archetypes. 5. Case study, my coffee shop. 6. Complex evolutionary systems. And 7. We'll be wrapping up the workshop. Module 1. Your action plan. Before we start the workshop, this is the best time for you to begin taking notes. In your workshop notes, write the concepts, philosophy, models, formulas, trends, examples, and results that you will later need to put together an action plan. At the end of the workshop, you'll need your action plan to position yourself in your organizational future goals as you become the transformational leader you deserve to be. Leadership in complex systems. Complexity leadership could be defined as adaptive mechanisms developed by complex organizations in new conditions required by the information age, rather than technical problems entailed by the industry age. Complex systems are social networks composed by interactive employees interconnected through collaborative dynamic ties, such as shared goals. After the workshop definition and objectives, we'll learn about leadership in complex systems. Workshop description. Systems are everywhere in society and in nature. One goal in systems theory is to explore and look for properties, principles, concepts, patterns, models, and theories common to systems of all kinds. Understanding abstract systems provides insight to understand concrete systems, theories, models, and concepts in such constructive body of knowledge that can help explain and predict things. Effective managers understand that the concept of complexity can be viewed from several perspectives: the number of details or parts, the number and variety of interactions, the degree of diversity, and so on. Workshop perspectives. According to systems theory, it's very important for managers and leaders of organizations to learn and adapt to these leadership basic fundamentals you're about to be introduced to. Increase your ability to lead right and accomplish your objectives successfully. In this workshop, social and natural systems are covered from multiple perspectives, and it will introduce topics such as general system theory, systems thinking, system archetypes, and complex adaptive systems, just to name a few. As complexity increases in organizations, managers and especially leaders have to adapt and change in order to address new threats and opportunities, while at the same time managing organizational weaknesses and improving strength. This workshop will challenge you to assess the resiliency of an organization and prepares you to become a leader that can speak at all levels of the executive management groups in your organization. Workshop objectives. Organizations are increasingly a reflection of the confluence of dynamic influences and pressures to compete in uncertain environments. To function in our environment, we first have to understand the principles of complex systems so we can perform well in our organizations. At the end of this workshop, the leader should be able to 1. Understand systems leadership theory and apply it as a leader. 2. Think complex system, the contributions of leadership and its impacts. 3. Understand systems fundamentals, their classification, and learn stability models. 4. Analyze complex adaptive systems, their environment, and diversities. 5. Apply archetypal limits to success systems, scale-free networks. 6. Evaluate systems thinking in a case study, My Coffee Shop. 7. Understand evolutionary systems and their changes. And 8. Learn the need for change, its contributions, and strategic planning. Systems leadership theory. Over the last 2 decades, there's been a large spectrum of theories and concepts to identify and understand behaviors that drive organizational effectiveness. Recently, the model of complexity leadership has been proposed as a remedy to our current conditions, and it was suggested to be adapted to the status quo. According to Marion and Ulbane, many advocates of the top complexity leadership theory stated that the model allows for understanding of how successful organizations strive in turbulent times. Therefore, complexity leadership theory focuses on emergent process within complex systems and suggests that leadership needs to operate at all levels in a process-oriented with contextual and interactive fashion. Leadership in complex systems. Leadership at the organization level is highly contingent and dependent upon the quick learning and adaptation to the demand levels of systems. How well these functional demands are balanced and met will determine the ability of the organizational system to adapt and survive in different environmental situations. To balance the exploitation of existing companies and to be ready for the exploration of new products, systems demands that leadership mechanism be ready for these events. Leadership in all of its aspects serves 3 functional demands. Generative leadership identifies and generates variety in the program of action, resources, and capabilities available to the organization. Unifying leadership promotes collective identity or unity and catalyzes actions and communications that pressure others to conform to a program. It clarifies boundaries and enables increased participation and cooperation at the margin within a tractor basin. Convergent leadership increases the perceived benefit to cost ratio of participating in a program of action. This deepens and makes less rugged the attractor basin associated with agents choosing to adopt a particular program of action. How well leadership apply these functions will determine how successful the organization will remain competitive in their complex system environment. Leadership impacts in complex systems. Complexity leadership theory recognizes the dynamic interactions that take place within organizations as they change, create innovation, and evolve with a focus on complex relationships and network interaction rather than controlling, standardizing, and autocracy. Leaders can impact complex systems by rebuilding the company's culture, recognizing the company's employees, setting agendas, delegating and prioritizing the work of employees, managing their employees to become world-class employees, inspiring and leading by example, and using emotional intelligence in all they do. Module 2. Systems Leadership Theory. Effective leaders understand that systems are those containing networks of a diverse number and type of agents, nodes, and connections, relationships, and properties of nonlinearity, self-organization or emergence, and adaptation to learning, among others. Systems can be viewed from several perspectives: the number of details or parts, the number and variety of interactions, the degree of diversity, and so on. Module 2 will be focusing on systems leadership theory. Systems theory. Systems theory is the interdisciplinary study of systems. A system is a cohesive conglomeration of interrelated and interdependent parts, which can be natural or human-made. Every system is bound by space and time, influenced by its environment, defined by its structure and purpose, and expressed through its functioning. The objectives of systems theory are to model a system's dynamics, constraints, conditions, and to elucidate principles such as purpose, measure, methods, and tools that can be discerned and applied to other systems at every level of nesting and in a wide range of fields for achieving optimization that can be reached by many potential means. So, general systems theory is about developing broadly applicable concepts and principles, as opposed to concepts and principles specific to one domain of knowledge. System dynamics is an approach to understanding the nonlinear behavior of complex systems over time, using stocks, flows, internal feedback loops, and time delays. Systems fundamentals. General systems theory is a name which has come into use to describe a level of theoretical model building, which lies somewhere between the highly generalized constructions of pure mathematics and the specific theories of networks composition. Networks are made from a group of people called agents, or elements, that are linked by relationships among themselves. These networks become a system once the element's behavior, among the elements, is established and the procedures are adopted. We will look at these behaviors later in the workshop. Systems may be natural, such as the universe, the solar systems, the planets; social, organizations, communities, and families; or artificial, such virtual groups, artificial life, and artificial societies. A system model. General systems theory is a model of certain general aspects of reality, but it's also a way of seeing things which were previously overlooked or bypassed, and in this case, a methodological maxim. And like every scientific theory of broader compass, it is connected with and tries to give answer to perennial problems of philosophy. Though a complex system may in retrospect appear to be ordered and predictable, hindsight does not lead to foresight, because the external conditions and systems constantly change. Unlike in-ordered systems, where the system constrains the agents, or chaotic systems, where there are no constraints, in a complex system, the agents and the system constrain one another, especially over time. This means that we cannot forecast or predict what will happen. Systems classification. Systems are classified as open and closed. We'll work with open systems, as this is the type of system we leaders mostly operate. The difference between them is when the behavior changes as the exchange of materials, information, and energy functions openly in open systems. They classify as closed systems. There is no exchange of material, information, or energy in this environment. Open systems. This is a system open to its environment, such that information, energy, or materials are exchanged. An organization is an example of an open system, wherein information and raw materials are obtained from the external environment, processed into goods or services, and are sold into the marketplace. Complex systems. Complex systems, however, have few to many parts, few to many nonlinear interactions. Some examples are a jazz group or a social organization. Adaptive systems, defined as a group of semi-autonomous agents who interact in interdependent ways to produce system-wide patterns, for example, people and organizations. Evolutionary systems. These are systems which reproduce with mutation, whereby the most fit elements survive and the less fit die down. Examples include industries, species, the economy, technology, and language. The classification details of systems are very extensive and would take a long time to explain them all. So for this workshop, we'll only focus on complex, adaptive, and evolutionary systems. Complex systems model. Complex systems are systems whose behavior is intrinsically difficult to model due to the dependencies, competitions, relationships, or other types of interactions between their parts, or between a given system and its environment. In our model, it's important to notice the MIE, materials, information, and energy factors, represents the threats and opportunities getting in and out of any system. These MIEs are characteristics of resilience or vulnerability, competition or cooperation, emergence or self-organization, adaptation or learning, similar or opposed information processing patterns. Because such systems appear in a wide variety of fields, the commonalities among them have become the topic of their interdependent area of research. In many cases, it's useful to represent such a system as a network, where the nodes represent components and links to their interactions. Systems Stability Model. This is an example of a complex system. The model is displaying many components which may interact with each other simultaneously. This model shows the country of Afghanistan and the state of their stability. Here we can see the networks of coalition capacity and properties, the overall government capacity, the population conditions and beliefs, and other networks within the system. You can tell here that it would be a gigantic task for the top leader to handle. So he assigns dependable and loyal leaders to each network to coordinate their efforts with each other. Remember that complex systems are systems whose behavior is intrinsically difficult to model due to the dependencies, competitions, relationships, or other types of interactions between a given system and its environment. Therefore, each leader's behavior must be selected carefully and with the adequate personality to perform their task efficiently and sustainable. Module 3. Complex Adaptive Systems. Effective leaders understand that complex systems are those containing networks of a diverse number and type of agents, nodes, and connections, relationships, and properties of nonlinearity, self-organization or emergence, and adaptation or learning, among others. Complexity can be viewed from several perspectives: the number of details or parts, the number and variety of interactions, the degree of diversity, and so on. Module 3 will be focusing on complex adaptive systems and its diversity. Complex systems. Complex systems constitute a group of agents or people interacting among themselves and behaving with a very dynamic set of emotional qualities that makes an agent different from other agents. One of the early theories of complexity is that complex phenomena arise from simple rules. Consider the rules for the flocking behavior of birds: fly to the center of the flock, match speed, and avoid collision. This simple rule theory was applied to industrial modeling and production early on, and it promised much, but it did not deliver in isolation. More recently, some thinkers and practitioners have started to argue that human complex systems are quite different from those in nature and cannot be modeled in the same ways because of human unpredictability and intellect. In other words, our rationality and different personalities will not allow us to discipline ourselves like the flock of birds or many more species' needs of survival. The environment. Our environment is made of many complex networks. It involves large numbers of interacting elements. The interactions are nonlinear, and minor changes can produce disproportionately major consequences. The system is a very dynamic environment. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and solutions cannot be imposed. Rather, they arise from the circumstances. This is frequently referred to as emergence. The system has a history, and the past is integrated with the present. The elements evolve with one another and with the environment, and evolution is irreversible. Complex Adaptive Systems, CAS. A complex adaptive system, or CAS, is defined as a group of semi-autonomous agents who interact in interdependent ways to produce system-wide patterns, such that those patterns then influence behavior of the agents. Dooley, 1996. In human systems, each agent, person, groups of people, and/or clusters of groups can make their own choices about when and how they interact. Whatever these interactions are, over time, some interactions of agents will be more frequently occurring than others, generating system-wide patterns of behavior that come to characterize that system. Subsequently, those patterns will then reinforce the behavior of individual agents, which serves to strengthen the patterns. We call these predominant patterns that influence agent behavior culture. Whether it's the culture of an organization, a group of people, or family, the patterns of expectations and decision-making become characteristic of that particular group. The CAS model. Here is a complex adaptive system model. This model represents a system where a perfect understanding of the individual parts does not automatically convey a perfect understanding of the whole system behavior. Complex adaptive systems are complicated because they're dynamic networks of interactions, and their relationships are not aggregations of the individual statistic entities. They are adaptive in that individual and collective behavior mutate and self-organize corresponding to the change-initiating micro-event or collection of events. Typical examples of complex adaptive systems include climate, cities, firms, markets, governments, industries, ecosystems, social networks, power grids, animal swarms, traffic flows, social insect colonies, for example ants, the brain and the immune system, and the cell and developing embryo. Complex adaptive systems are characterized by a high degree of adaptive capacity, giving them resilience in the face of perturbation. Adaptive systems diversity. Complex nonlinear behavior is possible without component diversity. For instance, in a turbulent but otherwise homogeneous fluid, but adaptation relies on variations and differences between system components. But diversity means more than simply having a range of different individuals, strategies, or populations. From the perspective of the entire system, diversity means having a greater range of options for responding to environmental changes, and a corresponding higher likelihood that a solution to a particular problem will be found. Therefore, diversity in complex adaptive systems arises by chance and imperfection, recombination, and in social sciences by innovation and foresight. Diversity is maintained by successful innovation that replace those that are lost from the system through selection. Module 4. Archetypes Introduction. Archetypes were a concept introduced by Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, who believes that archetypes were models of people, behaviors, or personalities. In this workshop, we'll concentrate on systems archetypes as patterns of behavior, circles of causality, and balancing feedback. We will focus on the concepts of limits to success, growth, and how to implement PDCA. You'll learn how to recognize systems collapsing to failure and the reasons of why systems overshoot their capacity. We will conclude with an important subject name, Scale-Free Networks, in where we will learn how the power law distribution prevents and removes archetypes. Systems archetypes. Systems archetypes are patterns of behavior found in many of our systems. Systems are expressed here by circles of causality, and they are of similar structure. Identifying a system archetype and finding the leverage enables efficient changes in a system is the responsibility of the leaders. The basic idea of systems thinking is that every action triggers a reaction. In system dynamics, this reaction is called feedback. Sometimes a feedback, or reaction, does not occur immediately because the process contains delays. A system's process graph is set up here with circles of causality, which aid to visualize how different variables in a system are interrelated, and which includes actions, feedback, and delays occurs. According to our system loop model, the plan is put in place by executing it from the circle to the left to the circle on the right. This is shown here as the current state. Once the plan is on the right, the process goes back from the right circle to the left circle, indicating here a new current action being returned with the corrected information in the form of feedback to take corrective action. Here, one can adjust and correct the original plan. All this process takes time, therefore expect some delays. Remember that archetypes may interfere with this process. Leaders must be aware of this by analyzing the feedback and adjusting the plan accordingly. If no corrective action is taken, the consequences then will limit the leader's success. However, if the leader takes a corrective action, the burden would be blocked, and the plan will be on the way to success. Limits to success. The limits to success archetype shows that being successful can be just as dangerous to long-term health as being unsuccessful. Even success can sow the seeds of failure by stressing and overburdening the current system. For example, successful high-growth products will eventually saturate market demands, limiting future growth. The unprecedented growth produced by a reinforcing feedback process until the system reaches its peak. The halt of this growth is caused by limits inside or outside of the system. However, if the limits are not properly recognized, the former methods are continuously applied, but more and more aggressively. This results in the contrary of the desired state. In other words, a decrease of the system by limiting your success. Therefore, we see here the behavior curve shows that as time progressively increases and your plan is climbing right along to the top of its peak, the limit to success archetype begins constraining your progress, limiting your actions, and making your performance current state poor and continuously blocking your efforts until your plan progress stops climbing and begins descending to failure. PDCA. Plan, Do, Current Action. The PDCA, Plan, Do, Current Status, and Action, are the steps to be taken by agents in a relational process so their network becomes alive. Here is a classroom assignment plan for us to analyze. Only this time, we'll do it together. First, every student action plan begins by preparing their homework the best they can. Second, the students turn in their finished homework to the instructor to be graded. Next, the instructor corrects the students' homework and graded them all and gives the homework back to the class. This is the feedback. At this point, every student reads their feedback and will decide one of two things. A, they would like to succeed and will verify the instructor's feedback. B, they do not care to succeed and will ignore the instructor's feedback. Now let us identify the archetypes here. If some students get the wrong feedback and become deceived, obviously this will limit some of the students' chances of success if they do not check with the book and friends to validate the correct answers. If this behavior continues, here the issue escalates, and some students will have problems as they move further into higher education. But if some students validate their feedback right away, ask questions, and find out they received good, accurate feedback from the instructor. If students validate their answers, they will succeed in higher education. This is called success to be successful. System collapse and failure. Societal collapse has common factors which contribute to their own disintegration. Some of these common factors are economic, environmental, social and cultural, and disruptions in one domain sometimes cascade into another. In some cases, they collapse due to natural disasters, such as tsunamis, earthquakes, or massive climate changes. The fact is that systems, including societies, collapse for a variety of reasons as we described, and these threats, which may come from external or internal sources of the environment, may overwhelm the system, making it weak, causing it to collapse. From the system model display here, we learn the following. Human social systems are dependent on their environment, which are considered independent variables. Unexpected changes in the environment may also contribute to collapses and failures, depending on the nature of the change. Human social systems are dependent on supplies within a range, such as materials, current weather information, or energy suppliers. The absence of one of these MIEs may also contribute to the networks collapsing. Any changes or perturbations happening to the system may result in threats or opportunities, depending on the situation. In the social system, overshoot happen when the carrying capacity of our environment is exceeded by our population. In other words, the consumption fluctuates in such a way that we cannot be sure of the supply's availability. There are several threat factors that affect the overshooting of our systems. These types of threats are called perturbations. Perturbations are divided in exogenous, external factors, and endogenous, internal factors, which many organizations in human social systems need to function. So, how these perturbations look like? Exogenous perturbations. These external perturbations may cause systems to fail. They are physical and environmental, such as climate change, bugs, or diseases like COVID-19. The economy, the law of diminishing returns, or economic conflicts. The competition, conflicts with competitors, disruptions of MIE. The advancement of technology, unable to keep up with competitors' technology. The political status, change of presidents, revolutions, takeover, apathy. The society at large, such as the disruption of MIE flows. Endogenous perturbations. These internal perturbations may cause systems to fail. They are the lack of resources, the absence of talent, the lack of accurate financing, the interruption of energy to operate and survive. Scale-free networks. A scale-free network is one network with a power law degree distribution. Networks with power law distributions are called scale-free because power laws have the same functional form at all scales. A network is called scale-free if the characteristics of the network are independent of the size of the network. For example, the number of nodes. That means that when the network grows, the underlying structure remains the same. To scale a network means to grow a network or increase the size of a network. Thus, scalability means the ability to be able to scale or adapt the network for future growth. In the context of network theory, a complex network is a graph with non-trivial topological features. Features that do not occur in simple networks, such as lattices or traditional random graphs, but often occur in graphs modeling real systems. There are two major components that explain the emergence of the scale-free property in complex networks: the growth and the preferential attachment. A growth process where over an extended period of time, new nodes join an already existing system, like the internet. Preferential attachment is called a new coming node who prefers to connect to another node which has already a certain number of links with others. Consequently, leaders are recommended to utilize this type of robust network modeling approach to plan a successful exponential growth and minimize the chances for archetypes in their organizations. Module 5. Case Study. In this module, we will analyze a small business coffee shop named My Coffee Shop. The coffee shop operates with a small crew of employees. Each employee has been assigned their duties, and they are experiencing a successful growing of their customer base. The module will introduce the My Coffee Shop model, their network of operation, and their business archetypes, which may become their limit for growing. We then go through several pertaining notes as we continue our analysis, and finally end the case study with conclusions and recommendations. So let us begin the case study. My Coffee Shop. We will begin by recollecting how this shop came about. An investor opens a business coffee shop and names it My Coffee Shop. He picked a small building in a busy area of the city. He then hires 3 employees and gave each of them the rules and responsibilities as follows. A barista, which is responsible for multiple administrative tasks and to make quality coffee. An order taker, which it was responsible for taking customers' order and charge for it. An order server, which is responsible for keeping the shop presentable and serving coffee to the clients. The shop operates 6 days a week and rest 1. The tree employees will be paid accordingly, will receive benefits, and will carry on their duties operating as a service shop network. The shop network will be establishing relationships by making and serving quality coffee to their customers, while taking care of all the responsibilities this type of business demands. They will take care of administration and logistics with vendors, providers, and state and local government policies, preparing and deliver high-quality coffee to every customer that requests their services, and maintaining a very clean, presentable shop day in and day out. My Coffee Shop Model. In this model view, the shop network will be operating the way is indicated in this graph. So for the process to take place, a series of events will need to happen. These events are: first, they need to focus on the incoming MIE needs by first establishing the utilities to operate their equipment in the shop. Also, by keeping themselves informed of current weather reports and other pertaining information, and finally focusing on their supplies by having the agents establishing good relationships with the outside suppliers and to make sure they operate consistently on time and with the best quality product their suppliers deliver to them. Second, the preparation and presentation of their coffee products must always have the best taste and freshness for their customers' satisfaction. Lastly, the shop must also focus on all outgoing MIE needs by first making sure they satisfy their customers' demands as they requested by paying all their bills on time to avoid interruptions, keep their license and taxes current and up to date. My Coffee Shop Network. Let us begin by describing the components of our coffee shop network. The double arrow indicates a bidirectional relationship. S indicates a supplier. BA indicates a barista. OT indicates an order taker. OS indicates an order server. And C indicates a customer. Of course, we must remember that the coffee shop may have more than one supplier or customer. In this case study, we'll put the network on the static mode so we can analyze the case better. Now let us look at how are the dynamics of this static network. We'll begin with how the relationships operate within the network. From the S to BA, the suppliers must provide materials, energy, or information to the barista, who responds with information, acceptance or money, materials, returns. From the C to OT, customers order materials, beverages from the OT, who in turn takes information, money, and provides information, acknowledgement. From the OT to the C, the order servers deliver materials, beverages, and information, thank you, to customers, who in turn provide information, acknowledgement. My Coffee Archetypes. The coffee shop employees must first focus on the patterns of behavior within their network to be able to recognize possible archetypes. The first year of their operations, they must find the obstacles or opportunities that will hinder or help the way they're operating. If continue to operate without watching these behaviors, they're risking their operations and it may be very costly to recover later on. Analyzing and paying attention to these issues is essential to determine if the coffee shop will continue success or not. So let us first begin by focusing on the barista, since it seems that he has the most responsibilities. The barista plays an important role in the coffee shop. We know that he will be in charge of ordering and receiving all supplies from several suppliers. He will also be responsible for payroll, supervise vacation, call a temp if permanent employees call sick, make sure all utilities are paid on time, report local and federal taxes, keeping the operating licenses up to date, and calling contractors or vendors to repair the building equipment. In addition, he'll be making coffee drinks and taking care of the customers' complaints. To do all these responsibilities required the necessary tools to be successful. So the expectation is to provide the shop with the last technology available and programs with the latest software, TurboTax, QuickBooks, and others. Not giving the barista the tools to succeed will limit the shop their capacity to growth. My Coffee Shop notes 1 of 2. This model represents the actual activities made by the 3 employees as they establish relationships within themselves and with their distributors, suppliers, utility agencies, cable companies, to check daily weather reports, state and federal governments to pay their taxes, contractors that provide service and repairs to the shop, and vendors to provide dining supplies to serve their clients. The notations tell the story of who the members are in this process network, and their possible archetypes to be present as the life cycles for the shop begins. Owners and employees of this shop must be aware of these archetypes to make decisions on time, to avoid failures and continue growth. They need to focus on what would limit their chances of function well within their process and explore the possibilities of growth as well. We will use our notes to describe how this dynamic works. On graph 1, we represent an agent, on the left circle with the capital letter A, and on the right circle we represent the system with a capital letter S. The E represents the effectors or the output response, and the D represents the detectors or the incoming stimulus in both circles. On the left circle, the detector in the agent senses the environment stimuli. The agent begins the process by reacting to the environment stimuli. Once the answer is found, the agent then makes a response, with the effector, to the environmental stimuli, to the environment detector. There is no link between agent A and the system S. Now let us look at graph 2 network representation. Agent A1 begins sending a signal, effect, to agent A2. Agent A2 receives or detects the signal, processes it, and responds, A2 effector, to the A1 signal, A1 detector. This is all possible because of the link between both agents. When this process is done hundreds of times a day and for weeks, you do not have the tools to simultaneously process multiple inputs into correct outputs. We can tell the agents will be failing the operations of the shop. Conclusions. We first recommend providing training to all employees so they can understand and recognize possible archetypes coming their way and begin a corrective plan fast. Knowing how the agent's multiple repetitions of detectors and effectors work, we recommend focusing on balancing responsibilities, giving to all agents and what their respective compensations are. According to the delegation of duties, the barista has multiple responsibilities, which demands time and careful managing of all operating costs, lead and supervise. We recommend assessing the barista compensation. Assess the possibility of hiring additional help for the barista. Finally, we recommend to the stakeholders to invest in adequate technology to achieve greater efficiencies and anticipate possible archetypes that will surprise the shop. Recommendations. We conclude this case study by recommending the following. Management must look at the entire shop operations and create an immediate short-term plan to correct the current archetypes we discussed in this workshop. In addition to the short-term plan, they must also establish a long-term plan for future archetypes. Management should provide their employees with basic systems training so they understand what they are facing and react to incoming archetypes in the future. Management should provide the necessary capital investments to take corrective actions in preventing archetypes from even becoming an issue moving forward. Module 6. Complex Evolutionary Systems. Complexity and evolutionary systems theories are interdisciplinary theories that grew out of systems theory in the 60s. An evolutionary system is known by the dynamics of their interactions, which sets itself out of equilibrium, making it impossible to anticipate its arrival. In this workshop, you will learn about the concept of evolutionary systems, why there's a need for change, the factors that contribute to this change, look at the concept of cultural changes, and will challenge you to establish your own strategic plan to make changes that that makes a difference. Let us then begin by describing what are evolutionary systems. Evolutionary systems. Evolutionary systems are a type of system which reproduce with mutation, whereby the most fit elements survive and the less fit die down. Evolutionary systems are characterized by its moving equilibria and dynamics of its co-evolutionary interactions, which cannot be foreseen in advance. The study of evolutionary systems is an important component of complex systems theory and research. After World War II, the reigning paradigm of products-oriented mass production had reached its peak. At that time, the management systems were known as linear assembly lines, organizational hierarchies of command, production quality control, and mass consumption. Since then, the competitive advantage was derived almost exclusively from the internal resources of the firms through the extended networks of suppliers and customers. The re-engineering of the process, reintegrating individual components into effective, more autonomous, and even self-manageable wholes, has characterized the present state of our organizations. The production process became a business process, and therefore subject to qualitative redesign and re-engineering. The need for change. No doubt that we live in exponential times. Changes can be planned or unplanned. Either way, changes will take effect. The planned is controllable, but the unexpected changes are not. Change is a response to external circumstances, situational variables, and the environment. Changes are mostly unplanned. Instead, it is an adaptive or selection-based process which will happen at a fast pace. The complexity, which increases continually, the longer wait, the complex it gets. The risk. Changes will bring new and higher risks, so risk analysis is a must. The change, which will bring radical changes that will force faster adaptation. The element of surprise or the unexpected. This will become a daily feature of life. As your organization begins a change process, management needs to understand why they are changing, what they are changing, the approach, how to adopt, and what the outcome will be getting. So let us see these wonders. Why of change? Are the forces or sources of change present? What are they? What of change? Is it a first or second order change? What scale and time do we need to use? How of change? Is this change an adaptive or generative, proactive or reactive, planned or unplanned? Target of change. How do we plan the outcomes of this change? Do we overstock or slow down? The contributing factors of change. There are many factors that contribute to daily changes in organizations. These factors may create opportunities or threats which may improve or affect the way organizations do business. The source of these factors may come from external or internal environments. So let us look at these factors. External environment. These changes may come unexpected and uncontrollable. Population growth. The external uncontrollable factor may bring more demand. Process improvement. This factor must take place to remain competitive. Innovation. This factor will help organizations to be ahead of competitors. Market demands. This factor will demand higher quality of products at a low price. Globalization. This is a factor will depend on culture's practices and demands. The economy. This dynamic function fluctuates daily and affects organizations' profits. Internal environment. These changes may be anticipated and controlled. Cultures. These changes happen in all industries. Leaders must control it. Resources. This factor is necessary to have consistent flow, or we fail. Leaders and employees' behavior. Always present in organizations. Needs accountability. Organizational learning or adaptation. Leader to learn the organization's network's process. The product life cycle change. In business, organizations focus their attention on the product life cycle. The product lifecycle is the progression of an item through the 4 stages of its time on the market. Stages are: introduction stage. Here, the business is looking to get a foothold on sales by establishing branding and assuring the market of the quality of it. An initial low-price policy to get into the market. Selection of a distribution model to get the product onto the market. Promotion of the product targeting specific groups. Growth stage. After the successful introduction comes the growth stage. Maintaining the quality of the product, adding extra services or support. Keeping the price at a good level to maintain sales growth. Increasing distribution. Sourcing new, faster ways of getting products out. Marketing campaigns aimed to broader audience and growing markets. Maturity stage. With business growth established, it moves to maturity as follows. Adding features will make the product differ from incoming competitor. Cutting prices to counter competition. Revising distribution channels and using incentives to encourage stores. New promotions that aim to show difference between products. Decline stage. When this happens, the business should consider keeping the product on the market by adding or removing features, reducing cost and keeping just for a niche segment of the market, discontinue the product or selling the product rights to another company. Dialectical change. The dialectical change, also known as the political change, is the change that happens as the result of clashing ideologies or belief systems ending in struggles or conflicts. Dialectics rejects changes, seeing things as in a constant process of coming into being and dying. Sociology describes conflict of change as an inherent attribute of human interaction. Our human nature is such that it is described as being conflictive and controversial, depending on individual personalities and philosophies. A conflict is a struggle between people's ideas or concepts. It arises because there are needs, values, or ideas that are seen to be different. There is no means to reconcile the dispute. Therefore, dialectical change is the change of process that occurs in all environments, and that takes place by predominantly bargaining, consciousness raising, persuasion, influence, and power. This type of change is often seen in organizational modes of operations, and where leaders' expected behavior is conducted with the highest emotional intelligence competencies and traits needed to succeed. Social cognition change. Social cognition is a subtopic of social psychology that focuses on how people process, store, and applied information about other people. It focuses on the role that cognitive processes play in our social interactions. Perception, attention, memory, and action planning would all be examples of this cognitive process. Social cognition changes refers to our thoughts about the interpretations of ourselves and other people. People are susceptible to bias errors, especially when making attributions about themselves and others. Now, affects refers to the feelings that we experience as part of life and includes both moods and emotions. Managers and leaders that are aware of these types of emotions in their people must adopt and practice a series of emotional intelligence competencies to understand their people's moods when they're under stress or depressing affecting their performances. It is vital that leaders be empathetic with people so they become attuned to a wide range of emotional signals and letting themselves sense the felt but unspoken emotions in a person or a group. Culture change. Culture change is the influence of cultural capital on individual and community behavior. It has been called repositioning of culture, which means the reconstruction of the cultural concepts of a society. Cultural changes places stress on the social and cultural capital determinants of decision-making and the manner in which these interact with other factors, like the availability of information or the financial incentives facing individuals to drive behavior. Culture often appears fixed to the observer at any one point in time because cultural mutations occur incrementally. Cultural change is a long-term process, which present great resistance to changes and to their own redefinition. policymakers need to make a great effort to resist cultural stereotypes and improve some basic aspects of society's cultural traits. Strategic planning, made simple. First, use the system environment framework: economy, technology, government, society, competition, and the physical environment. List some key events, trends, and forecasts, and actual data from your organization controller. Second, look at your organization and see where the needs are: suppliers or inputs or detectors, effectors or outputs or customers, resources or PTs or STs or ops, agents or meta-agents, leadership or staff or change agents or gatekeepers. Third, explore resilience in more detail by asking yourself the following. On a 1 to 5 scale, with 1 being low and 5 being high, how robust is your organization? Do redundancies exist in critical functions, programs, and operations? How resourceful is your organization? How capable is your organization to respond to threats, to opportunities? How capable is your organization to recover from disasters? Fourth, summarize where you are and summarize where you want to go. Fifth and final step. Look at the information this workshop provides you with and determine what change models might your organization embrace over the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you for embracing change. Module 7. Although this workshop is coming to an end, we hope that your journey to improve your understanding of how leaders operate in complex systems and how they react to unexpected changes have been productive to you. Most importantly, we hope these tools give you a better understanding of the dynamic behaviors of your own organization. As a last effort, please focus on the following slides for final reflection and opportunities. We'd like to thank you for participating on this workshop and wish you the best as you continue furthering your leadership training to become the transformational leader you deserve to be. Reflecting on the workshop. In this workshop, you learned about 8 important leadership concepts. 1. Systems leadership theory, for you to understand your leader position in your organization. 2. Leadership theory, to make you aware on how to operate right in complex systems. 3. Systems fundamentals, which will grow your knowledge on how systems work. 4. Complex adaptive systems, to help you adapting to changes in your organization. 5. Archetypal thinking. This will help you recognize limits of success in your environment. 6. Evaluated a case study for you to apply systems thinking and recommend solutions. 7. Learned evolutionary systems and changes, to be aware on how to react to evolution. And 8. Evaluated the need for change and learning to apply strategic planning, to expand your view on change and recognize the needs of your organization. Time to make a difference. Always remember, change drives progress. So begin by taking the first 5 steps. 1. As a leader, start by immersing yourself in your organization's long-term vision for success. Get involved with the key players of modernization and progress. 2. Put your organizational change management into action by transforming people to a different way of thinking, working, and acting to achieve desired business outcomes. 3. Get your stakeholders engaged by supporting your initiatives with strong proving trends and data from your organization's controllers. 4. Be in constant communication with your stakeholders and remind them of the perfect blend. Technology and automation done right will provide sustainability at minimum cost. And 5. Implement competencies modeling to management change mindset and encourage them to learn about the benefits of emotional intelligence as their baseline leadership program for safety prevention and a world-class workforce. Reviewing your action plan. This is the time to collect your notes, including your action plan for your organization. Review them one more time, only this time think out of the box, and make sure you're ready to apply your new system's knowledge in your organization. Remember, this plan will be the secret of your success in many years to come. Good luck, and be sure you enroll in the second and last core workshop. This will enhance your decision-making process in your organization. Do not forget, we're here for you. If you have any questions about this workshop or on any leadership issue, please send us a note from our website located at www.leadershipemotionaldevelopment.com or send us an email at led.management.consultants@gmail.com. As always, for your immediate needs, please call us at 803-881-8066 or 540-435-6964. Final words. This concludes the first core level workshop from our Systems Theory Group. Thank you for your participation, and we'll be happy to help you reviewing and discussing your action plan. Call us for a free consultation. And now, we'll leave you with some words from the wise.